Okay, the next Ask Energy question is from Rob, and Rob will be doing a 190-mile bike ride later this year. And his question is, how should you adequately fuel for bike rides lasting longer than 4 to 5 hours? How should the intensity of the ride influence nutrition, and how much protein should you be consuming on longer, easier rides? Okay, great question. So in context, let's set this up. This is a longer ride. It's actually for a charity. So I'm assuming the intensity will be a little bit lower, but let me go back and just refer to that really quickly and explain that. Usually, when you are cycling at lower intensities, you can eat more solid food, depending on the digestive system, of course, but more mixed nutrient food. What that means is you can consume a little bit of carbohydrates, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat. Now, for a distance like that, if it's going to be over 4 or 5 hours, which I assume it is, because if you're doing a 190-mile ride in 5 hours, Rob, props to you. I know you're a fast athlete, but that's pretty darn fast. Anyway, this is going to be an all-day event, right? So what that says in my mind is that, okay, you cannot depend just on carbohydrates because number one, you're going to have to carry a lot of carbohydrates unless there are aid stations. And number two, because the intensity is lower, that offers an opportunity to consume not only carbohydrates, but also protein and fat. Why would you want to do that? Well, those will actually help you stay fuller longer and also help you keep more satiated or fuller. Now, a lot of ultra endurance athletes, be it runners or cyclists, will almost always include sources of protein and fat in their race day plan or their ride plan because there's such great sources of calories, especially fat, right? So here's the rule of thumb. As the intensity of exercise increases, there will be a certain point where your body needs more carbohydrates and your body cannot digest protein and fat too well. And that point is usually referred to as the metabolic efficiency point, right? If you don't know my work in the metabolic efficiency training area, please refer to, I'll put a link below so you can check it out or just go to the eNRG Performance website. You can read all about that. But basically, there's a point, physiological point, where your body will cross from mostly fat burning or oxidation to carbohydrate burning and oxidation. When that happens, your intensity is too high to support a lot of protein and fat breakdown. So you need more carbohydrate. But on a ride like this actually opens a great opportunity to have carbs, protein, and fat. So there's not necessarily a rule of thumb in terms of research when it comes to this, Rob. But what I will tell you is if you know your calorie level that you need per hour, and you know that from how many you burn per hour. So if you've had a metabolic efficiency test done, you know how many calories you burn per hour, then you can kind of backtrack. So let's say you're burning 800 calories per hour at that particular intensity while you're riding your bike. Well, you can't input exactly what you output. It's impossible. You wouldn't be riding your bike if you did that. So we don't expect you to input 800 calories, but I've actually come up with in my metabolic efficiency training creation almost over 20 years ago, I came up with a range of calories that is safe for the digestive system to input during exercise. Now, that range for cyclists is anywhere between 10% to 40% of total calories being burned. So, in my example, if you are burning 800 calories per hour using my 10 to 40% rule or range, you would input or consume anywhere between 80 to 320 calories per hour. Okay, now let's get to where those calories are coming from. On a ride like this, you don't necessarily need a lot of simple sugars, right? Because I'm assuming it's a charity ride, it's 190 miles. You didn't mention it was a race. So I'm thinking the intensity is lower. It's more of a fun ride, recreational ride. We're not thinking about top end performance. So we don't need as many simple sugars. So you can eat foods that still have carbohydrates. I mean, you can even think of solid foods if you want. A lot of cyclists will do PB&Js or peanut butter crackers or stuff like that, rice cakes kind of a thing, right? Not the crunchy ones, but the ones you can make at home and you can put a whole bunch of like ham and cheese in them, little rice balls, little rice squares, right? So you can eat things like that, but this is a great opportunity to sneak some protein and fat in. So usually where I start with athletes is consuming anywhere between about 5 to 15 grams of protein every 90 minutes during that longer training session. Now, that is with carbohydrates, right? So that 5 to 15 grams will be 20 to 60 calories worth of calories coming from protein. So obviously the rest should be made up of carbohydrate and fat. Fat is kind of a tricky one, and I know you didn't ask about this, Rob, but I'm going to answer this anyway. Fat is a tricky one because while you can get a lot of energy from fat, sometimes it can leave you either too full, or if you're not consuming the right types of fat, it can actually result in GI distress. Same thing with simple sugars and carbohydrate, right? So again, what I would not do is just eat something like a pizza, right? I mean, while you're riding your bike, probably not the best idea, right? But certain fats, such as medium chain triglycerides, which can come from things like coconut oil, and there's some products on the market that are focused on MCTs or medium chain triglycerides also. Those would be a great source of calories for something like this. Now, again, a lot of logistics that I don't know with this, but if there are no aid stations and you are trying to carry a lot of your food, you're going to have to go with really energy dense foods. So probably, a little bit of carbohydrate, a little bit of protein, maybe a little bit more fat, more of those medium chain triglycerides, because that's going to be more energy dense, right? So hopefully this has answered your question a little bit more, but let me summarize. You definitely still need carbohydrates, but not as many as you would for a very high intense effort. If you're below your metabolic efficiency point where you are actually burning more fat, you don't need as many carbohydrates. And in fact, I would say before this ride, make sure you are improving your metabolic efficiency through dietary alterations, because that will help with your efficiency in maintaining the power outputs throughout the entire 190-mile ride without needing a lot of carbohydrates every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes, right? It'll prolong your calorie needs while you're actually riding. Now, again, still keep carbohydrates in there. Maybe experiment with about 5 to 15 grams of protein per 90 minutes or so, right? You're gonna have to kind of relate that to how your digestive system is reacting, and then fill in the rest of the calories with fat-rich foods. And these can be things, like I said, the medium chain triglycerides can also come from things like nuts, like your monounsaturated fats. Those are very energy dense. Again, the first rule of thumb when it comes to something like this is make sure that your digestive system is happy with it, okay? Now, there are some products out there also, but if you can do some of this with food, that would be fantastic, because again, at lower intensities, your body can digest a little bit better. So, Rob, thank you for your question. Hopefully that helps a little bit. If you have additional questions, submit them, and we'll see you on the next Ask eNRG.